Ex-inmates? What was the stupidest thing you've seen a new inmate do on his first day in prison? Told a kid there was a pool out at yard. Guard saw him waiting to go out in shorts with his shower towel and asked him what he was doing. Kid said, "I'm gonna go swimming outside. It looks nice. Don't think I've laughed so hard in my life. It's unoriginal, but always funny." Story 2, worked as a corrections officer. Guy got busted for assault of a minor. Figured everyone else in the tank was on similar charges, so began talking openly about it, feeling he was safe. We had to subdue 5 guys who jumped him in the rec yard. Guy was sent to the hospital as he was fairly unresponsive. He was sent to protective custody after that. Commenter, dude in my state recently murdered 2 child molesters behind bars. Said they were unrepentant, and he's in for life anyway, so why not remove some evil from the world permanently? Those child molesters would have one day been set free. And this was a dude in for murder during a deal. Arguably killed a nice guy, has face tattoos and is scary looking, but everyone hates child molesters. Story 3. Kid came in and I assume he has watched a lot of movies because he figured he'd fight the biggest guy on the range. He wasn't even the toughest guy in the hospital he woke up in. Story 4. Obligatory, not me, but I know a guy and his cellmate was a young 19-year-old kid. The kid was confused, and in the course of talking about their lives, admitted he was bi. The guy I know told him, "Hey man, that's cool, but don't tell that to anyone else in here seriously." Commander, I saw this show with a gay prisoner in it. He wanted to be in solitary. Somebody tried to abuse him, so he grabbed their balls and squeezed. Hard. Then with balls still in hand, he twisted them and flipped himself over. Story 5. This idiot walked right into a Mexican gang meeting and almost got beaten up. I was in jail, not prison. Since many people are asking. From what I understand, the difference between prison and jail is this. Jail is for sentences of less than a year, whereas prison is for sentences of over a year, varying from state to state. Jails is run by the city or county, prisons ran by state or federal government. You can go to jail to await your trial before sentencing. Then after be sent back to jail or to prison depending on how long and whether it's a felony or not. Prison is for felonies. Commenter. When I first went in, this old white guy introduced himself and told this other white guy to look out for me. The other white dude came running from across the room. It was a big room, maybe 50 beds wide, grabbed my arm and pulled me out. He pushed me against the wall and said, "Dude, what the heck are you thinking? You would have gotten your ass beat and sent to the hospital." I asked him, "Why, that's the rec room, isn't it?" He said, "The Mexicans are holding a meeting right now." Dude ended up saving me 3 times during my incarceration of 2 days. I don't mean imprisonment as a term for being in prison. I mean it as a term of being locked up. To clarify, I was in jail, not prison. Story 6. Kid gets booked in, hits the unit, and starts borrowing food and other commissary items. Before he knew it, he was $200 in the hole. Problem is, in jail and prison, most people who are willing to loan items out expect 2 or 3 of the same item back. Interest. Very easy way to get yourself indebted is by borrowing any food or other items. Never get in debt while incarcerated. Story 7. Skinny kid, hippie type, got busted with some substances. Someone else on the range was getting beat up for something or other, and the kid tried to intervene. Just said, "Hey, leave him alone." Got beat to within an inch of his life in the shower. Pro tip, in jail, mind your own business. Commenter. I was still in intake in NSP, Nevada State Prison. A lil dude came in touting AB crap, Aryan Brotherhood. So an AB sent him on a mission to beat someone up, an old man. The old man beat his ass. I got to the yard. A black dude came into our unit, barking at a white dude about money owed. I was the only black dude in the unit. Black dude looks at me and says, "Osiris, we go accept this crap?" I raised up off my rack and said, "I have to live here, dog," and laid my ass back down. Pro tip, in jail, mind your own business. Story 8, a slight twist. We had a pink wet floor sign that we would put up in the entrance to the showers, so everyone knew there was someone in there jorking off. The fun game was to watch the new guys, myself included, innocently walk into the entrance to the showers that very first time, past the pink wet floor sign, and then see him come skittering back out a few moments later. It was a minimum security prison. We were all relatively harmless. I don't think there was ever more than strong irritation from the guy jorking in the shower. After all, it had likely been done to him when he was new. Story 9. Goofy-looking kid, curly hair, thick glasses. He comes in and for some reason he befriends me. He starts telling me what he did, assault if a minor. I told him not to be telling nobody that crap because it'll get you in trouble. The rest of that day and the next, I bailed out by then. I could hear him from across the hall telling other people. Not surprised if he's been kicked around a few times. Story 10. When the skinny little street thug, white kid, walked across the yard and threw a mic at a bench full of full-blown Crips. Didn't see him much after that crap storm. Commenter. Not in jail, but when I was living in LA, I was at a park. And no joke, some white kid did this as a joke to a group of black guys, and they beat the crap out of him. I was 10-ish and noped the out of there back to my house. Story 11. father-in-law did 12 years on a second-degree murder rap back in the very early 90s AAS. He told me that one time, this new guy plopped himself down at the Hells Angels table and started eating breakfast. When he was told to move, he ignored them. After breakfast, the Coes ended up having to cut through about 6 rolls of duct tape to get the guy loose. He never sat near the haze again. Commenter: I'm Canadian. I took police foundations in college and had the opportunity to visit a prison and walk around the med and minimum security prisons. Trailer Park Boys is not that far off from the truth. Crap looked like a party. In medium security, guards would joke that so much WD gets smoked here that they get a contact high, and it's so prevalent that they try to stop it from getting in. But once it's in its free game, some dude walked by our group and I noticed him pocket a Gatorade bottle of brown liquid, which I'm assuming was homemade alcohol. Another dude was absolutely roided the duck out, grilling us and flexing at us in his cell. Minimum security was where they put the almost retired COs, who weren't physically fit for the higher security roles. Literally like Trailer Park Boys cracking jokes with the guards. Guards looked the other way for small crap like WD, and inmates mostly seemed extremely respectful and just happy to be there in minimum. Story 12, admit that he was in for assault. And then it was about 8 p.m. and we found out he would not stop jorking off in his bunk. He was 22, and it was jail, not prison, so at that moment, we had maybe 12, 15 people in our cell. Some guy woke up from a nap and thought he was having a seizure, so he went to go check on him. What a damn shock they both had. Story 13. One guy bragging about what he did to get himself in jail. Other dude showering barefoot. Great way to get convicted. Great way to get jungle fungus. Commenter: my first time and I went to take a shower for the first time. I got undressed and was about to step in when like 6 people all started yelling at me, put some ducking sescorts on Get White Boy. After that, I bought some shower sescorts. Story 14. Not me, but my dad. Guy came in bragging at what he did. Said he was a monster and the toughest guy around and that he could take anybody on in the pen. Giving him the benefit of the doubt, he apparently was a big and tough guy. Come to find out though, he was in for the assault, then murder of a woman. He might been big and tough, but not after 5 big guys beat the absolute crap out of him and practically killed him. As most of you know, the one thing all prisoners can agree on is that anyone who messes with kids or women are on an immediate hit list. Story 15. Where I was in prison, they utilized 40mm soft round launchers to respond to group disturbances. Let me tell you, they weren't soft. Kid comes in thinking he's still hardcore from juvenile hall because guards there didn't do anything when people fought. Decided to up and join a gang that he knew nothing about on his first day. Thought he was tough and started to diss the gang they had high tensions with at the time and started a group disturbance. Cos responds, tell him to get down. He refuses and curses at them, boom 40mm to his face. Was an accidental shot to the face according to the CO. Face was distorted as hell after. Fractured skull. On his first day, story 16. So my dad's currently convicted, and the craziest story he's told me is one of the newer inmates was young and arrogant, always spouting off bullcrap about how unaccountable he was. Then one day, another inmate packed up his items, went into the younger inmate's cell and tried to strangle him. The younger inmate was that ducking annoying. He survived. The attempted murderer is in Max. And when the younger inmate came back from the hospital, he was still spouting bullcrap. Story 17. There was an old myth that if you challenged the meanest guy in your block to a fight, everyone else would leave you alone. It's true, no one will torment you if you're dead. Kid tried it and got dropped off the 5th tier. First day in Gen Pop, last day in Gen Pop. Most guys just want to do their time alone. Most abuse and violence in prison is about debt or tax. If you play it straight, 98% of guys will just leave you alone. Ducking someone up on the yard makes your time worse, not better. Loss of privilege, of time in solitary, most people don't want that. Most of the straight-up psychopaths are in 23/1 lockdown anyway. You get in debt or shoot your mouth off, and you will get settled or taxed. Both are to be avoided. Story 18. Got busted for smoking WD with 2 buddies. When we put in the holding cell, one of them wanted to mark the event by carving his name in the paint on the cell door. When we got put in a cell later, they came back and took him to solitary for a week. Story 19. Saw this weird, unshaven, scraggly young guy with a yellow beanie once who said he agreed with the Latin kings on social issues, but fiscally, he was more of an Aryan. He ended up joining both gangs. Story 20. This weird guy named Robert from the TV show 60 Days In has a couple stories that could be in this thread. The stupidest may have been when he covered the prison camera with a sheet. Went to solitary 30 days. He quit the program halfway. Story 21. There was a new guy who came in one day. You could tell he was gay by his mannerisms. A few days into his sentence, he was forced to suck a guy's banana. He bit it off. Story 22. This may not have been his first day, but I will never forget this. This while I was in the intake tank, which is the first tank or section you go into after being processed in county. This young kid comes into county and keeps complaining that he doesn't get his substances-related prescriptions in jail. He was really arrogant and constant, pissing everyone off. During count one day, as we were all in our bunks, he starts complaining again and then says to the guard, "What if we all riot?" Immediately, like 10 other guys yell very loudly, "We don't know or agree with him." The guard then says, "What the heck did you say?" The kid then continues about rioting and that he has rights. Everyone in the tank ducking stays like frozen in their bunk, trying their best to be non-threatening, and also show they have no interest in what this kid is saying. So the guard picks him up by his throat and slams him into the wall. After scaring the kid crapless, he explains he has a new charge for inciting a riot. Kid gets hauled off to solitary. Never saw him again, but I heard he spent the rest of his 30, 60, 90, whatever amount, days in solitary. Absolutely insane to me that he'd say that in a ducking county jail. Story 23. Just going to generalize. Small town folk who are used to being the biggest and baddest. Big fish, small pond types who think they are going to be king when they walk in. They usually are dominated pretty quickly. Dominated being either beat or made into a sex doll. Best bet if you go to prison, hopefully no one ever goes, is unless you know someone well connected on the inside, just keep your head down, focus on yourself, and do your time. It's going to be boring, menial, and seemingly endless, but you don't want to get caught up in any gang stuff or be snitching. There's a code and system in prison that needs to be followed, and if you walk in like King Crap of Turd Hill when you are a nobody, you will learn real quick that you ain't nothing. Story 24. I found a hypodermic needle in my thin mattress and tried to go give it to the guard. I was bum-rushed by an inmate, whose it probably was, and told that if I had given it to the guard, I would have faced a pee test and solitary. This was day 1. On day 3, I asked to trade laundry detergent for a back rub, and only after I did so did I realize that everyone thought I was gay. I was a very dumb 18-year-old white girl. Story 25. Spent a year in a Bangkok prison. Saw lots of crap go down, but the one story I have that's relevant to your question has to be this English guy that turned up one day. It was actually the first and only other British guy I would encounter while I was there, and the moment he came through the gates, I was called over to try and communicate and translate for him. He was refusing to talk to anyone, basically going on a silent strike because he thought he wasn't supposed to be there and they were denying his human rights and all that crap. First thing that happens when you enter the prison is they shave your head. This kid had massive dreadlocks and didn't want anyone touching them. But at this point, he had already made his bed and he was going to have to sleep in it. I went over to him and introduced myself, asked him what his name was, where he was from, etc. But he just stared at me in silence the whole time. One of the guards gave me a photocopy of his passport so I could see his name, age, and where he was from, etc. Against all odds, this kid was actually from my hometown, so my face lit up. Finally, I would have someone to talk to, and I'm sure we could chat crap and bond while we were in there. I need that, but he just refused to engage with anyone, even me who was trying so hard to get a word out of him. I explained over and over that he'd lost the game. He's in prison now and there is no way out of it, so just do what the guards say. They're going to shave your head first of all, and there's nothing you can do about it. Because no one had explained to me what exactly was going on, I was just confused why he wasn't talking to me. The more I spoke to him and the more he refused to talk back, the more pissed off I got. I just couldn't understand why he was being so difficult. And by the end of our encounter, I was ducking, shouting at him, telling him to stop being such a little bee and just accept your fate. I didn't know if he was retarded or genuinely couldn't speak, but it became clear that he was just putting on an act. Eventually, I just told the guards there is duck all I can do if he's not willing to speak, so go ahead and do what you've got to do. I said my goodbyes to him and told him he really needs to accept his fate. It will be easier on everyone. And when you're ready to talk, I'll be here because let me tell you, that's the best thing you could hope for in a place like this. He ended up being pinned down by the guards, and his dreads shave off while he was screaming and screaming. Of course I felt bad, but come on, time to swallow your pride, mate. He was then admitted to the prison, and he came to sit with me. He still refused to speak, so I got a notebook and pen, and we communicated via writing for a few days. The guards didn't know what to do with him, and all the prisoners just thought he was a mental case. I still wasn't sure myself. After a few days of gossip, another prisoner told me that the kid was faking it when I asked how he knew. He told me that he was arrested at the same police station with him, and the whole time he was in custody. This kid had been screaming bloody murder at the officers, claiming the violation of humans' rights and all that crap. Then one day, when I was having a chat with him by means of writing, he started asking me about the embassy, and I told him about what services they offer and how they can help, etc. Then he wrote down on the paper, "Can I make a phone call through the embassy?" I just looked at him dead on and said, "What good is a phone call if you can't ducking talk?" I couldn't help but chuckle, and he knew the gig was up. At least with me it was. Not long after that, the kid was taken from the prison and carted off to a mental health institution so they could evaluate him. I didn't see him for a few weeks when he suddenly reappeared looking very disheveled and completely traumatized. And wouldn't you know it, he could suddenly speak. He started telling me about the horrors of the mental institution he had just experienced, and it sounded ducking awful, even worse than the hellhole I was currently in, which is really saying something. We bonded for the month or so he was there, and we exchanged details. I've spoken to him since I've been out, and it turns out we have a fair amount of mutual friends, which is one hell of a coincidence. Anyway, the point of this story is he was an idiot for simply not cooperating with the guards and the prison rules. It's all well and good putting up a fight in the courts and with the local police, but once you're past that and you find yourself in prison, just ducking do as you're told. They can make life so much worse for you. Story 26. Went in when I was a young idiot. Our pod was all bunk beds, no cells. Just the room with beds and a side room with the TV. It was a unit for all the people working the same job. New guy comes in, little white dude, quiet and kept to himself. Until one night, out of nowhere, he starts sprinting around the room singing at the top of his lungs in the tune of Black Sabbath's Iron Man, but changed the lyrics to I am the N-word man, running through the hood from the Ku Klux Klan. Everyone was just kind of frozen for about 15 seconds, seriously confused. Then someone tripped him, and then it was just mayhem until the Keo could get enough help to disperse the crowd. I remember being surprised he survived. Everyone in the unit had steel toe boots for the job we did, holding them and hitting him in with them instead of wearing and kicking. The scene afterwards where all the guys are trying to figure out whose boots are whose, and comparing whose had the most blood was freaking surreal. Story 27. I did 14 years in federal prison for wire fraud. I got out last February. I'm 36. Some things I can say are these. While your sexuality may not be an issue outside of prison, inside prison, male inmates who are openly gay are generally disrespected. Gambling and substances create debts that are at some point unable to be paid and can result in serious issues for yourself. Most prisons operate a social hierarchy based on gang affiliations or hometowns, although there can be large separations based on race. However, child molesters will basically be free game for anyone who wants to take their crap or torment them. You might have been a badass outside of prison, but generally you can't fight several people at once, which is what would happen if you talk about how much of a badass you are. Keep your crap to yourself, and don't talk crazy to people, which is seen as disrespect. Respect that disrespect has a different meaning in prison, and you'll figure it out. Best to just keep to yourself, unless as much as possible, unless you want to embrace prison life and become institutionalized. Prison is not a place to make friends. Story 28. Guy came in, got on the top bunk within 10 minutes. Dude rolled off it and smacked his head on the concrete. Started to have a seizure. Guards eventually came and just videotaped him for a while in the middle of the room. Eventually, they walked him out when he stopped, but then he ran into the wall and fell down, then started to seizure again. They just kept filming. Nobody really thought he was having seizures, but he hit his head pretty bad, so they took him to the infirmary. Story 29. I got bunk restriction while I was in jail on one of my first nights. Twice a day, they did roll call where we all had to sit on our bunk, be quiet, while the officer came bunk to bunk and checked all of our wristbands and made sure we were all who we are. Halfway through, he was doing this. Someone rips the loudest, fattest, longest wet fart I've ever heard in my life. Me, having the mind of a 5-year-old, burst into laughter. I've never heard a fart like this in my life. A few other guys laugh, but even thinking of it now, I giggle about it. Anyways, the officer is like, all right, settle down, but I can't stop laughing about it. He tells me to calm down, but I tell him through my tears of laughter, I literally cannot help it. I really couldn't. It was the funniest thing that happened the few days I was in there. Anyway, he gets pissed. I try to explain I'm not trying to be rude and disobey him through my laughter, but he isn't having it. Luckily, he just gave me bunk restriction and didn't punish everyone. But I could see the TV from my bunk, so I just hung out the rest of the night. Story 30. I wheeled my cart to the stairs with my footlockers, mattress, and pillows on it. I carried up my footlockers and shut my cell door. I forgot my mattress downstairs. Somehow, no one had stolen it by the time I had the cops open my cell door, and I went down to get it. Commenter. I got in some trouble when I was 19 and had to do 60 days in a minimum security prison that had a school or work release program. My first hour inside after being strip searched, I was put into a dormitory room with 30 other guys who were doing 3 5-year stints. I had this little blue foam pad to sleep on the floor since there was super overcrowding in the facility. This guy from across the room who looked like her 8 people for breakfast comes strolling up to me and says, "Hey, didn't they give you a footlocker thing?" I say, "No." He's like, "See him on and waves we to come with him." We walk right out of the room and into the hall where a guard is posted further down. The guy with me says he didn't get a locker. The guard says until he's put into another dorm with a bunk open, we don't have any more to give. The guy with me says how bullcrap that is, and we go back to our room. About an hour later, I'm in a circle chatting with all the other guys who are in this dorm, and they are like, "We gotta give you a prison nickname." Another guy says we should buzz your hair so you can scare your mom when you get out. So these guys come up with the nickname for me, Snake. Then they start talking about, hey, did you hear about that guy Snake? He's one bad dude, man. These guys were all cool. They had the job of being the janitorial force in the facility because they could get along and be trusted to do so, and it made them some money each day. So I spent 2 days in that dorm with them, before being moved to the dorm in the basement where all the worst people in the building were while I waited for my transfer to the dorm with school or work release. There were at least 80 people in this giant windowless room with 40 bunk beds. A guard was stationed in there at all times because guys would get into fights all the time. I was down there for about 4 days and didn't talk to anyone. One day we were lined up in the hall about to be let into the cafeteria for lunch when one of the guys from my previous dorm came down the hall pushing a mop and bucket. Big guy, mid-40s, long black hair and goatee, staring at the floor. He looks up, sees me, and goes, "Sup, Snake," and just keeps on going. We weren't allowed to talk while in line, but everyone around me heard him say that, and they just looked over at me like, who is the duck, this guy? After a few more minutes, 2 more guys from that dorm come walking by and do the same thing. "How's it going, Snake?" I just nod, and they go back to their thing. It was awesome. Story 31. My family attorney told me about one of his clients who was sentenced to 2 years for a federal case, nonviolent. Someone gave him really bad advice about how to survive in federal prison. He followed the advice and found a big, tough-looking guy on the very first day. He beat him up severely. The victim turned out to be a tough-looking guy who was actually a gentle giant who didn't fight back much. Ended up with 2 broken legs and a fractured rib. My attorney's client got 4 extra years added to his 2-year sentence. That's what I call stupid. This was about 15 years ago. Not sure if the guy survived prison or not. Story 32. Here's one from a good friend of mine, we'll call him T, who spent half his life inside, picked a fight with the local inmates over something minor to establish dominance. The guy was European, and Europeans were kept separate from locals with good reason. There would be full-scale gang wars between the 2 sides now and again within the prison. None of his fellow Europeans backed him up. Some of them even jumped in on kicking the ever-loving crap out of the newbie. T doesn't think the guy made it. Story 33. Not an ex-inmate, but my mom's friend is a retired prison guard for a max security prison. He'd been there for a long time, and a lot of the inmates liked and respected him. There were a few instances where new inmates would try to be difficult or attack him to impress the older inmates. The newbies would get beat up pretty good and wouldn't cause trouble for him anymore. Don't mess with well-liked guards. Story 34. New dude got sentenced and came over to the felony pod. 2 levels. We're playing spades, and this dude says, "Man, I can't wait to get out of here." My partner in spades asked how much time he has. New dude says something, "Man, I got 4 months." My spade partner just stood up, smacked the cards out of his hand, told him to set a few, and stop guiding about 4 months. He then said, "I got ducking life, now what?" and proceeded to beat his ass. Co took his sweet-ass time too. Story 35. More stupid employee. A good friend, Steve, worked as a locksmith for a medium security prison. A really unpleasant job, apparently. He bid on and got the job as groundskeeper. He was the only actual prison employee, and his 4-man staff were trustee prisoners. The job was overseeing grounds using tractors, hand mowers, and lawn equipment. Some minor repairs were allowed, and the shop had tools for repairs. The groundskeeping hut was not on the actual prison grounds, but had its own unmonitored employee driveway and employee entrance. There was separate locked fenced driveway that went directly into the prison. This was how the prisoners and equipment came and went. The trustees were only searched when they returned to the prison grounds, either on the mowers or when returning to their cells. Otherwise, the groundskeeping hut was not frequently inspected. It was a plum prisoner job. My friend bought an older Harley, which ran, but not well. One trustee was a made motorcycle gang member, and my friend and he bonded over motorcycles. One day, Steve brought his motorcycle to work and showed it to the trustee. The trustee listened to the motor and said the bike needed bearings, which means an overhaul, a $4,000 job. If Steve could bring the crew in an hour or 2 before they were supposed to return to their cells, the trustee felt he could use that extra hour to overhaul the bike in a few weeks. And in the first days, he totally disassembled the Harley's motor. Later that day, while returning to the prison, the trustee got caught smuggling in a small screwdriver, which meant this trustee crew would never return. Steve knew the groundskeeping hut would be inspected the next morning, and he got the motorcycle frame and wheels onto a pickup and taken out the shop. He didn't have time to get the motor parts, which he could claim were leftover lawnmower parts, but he knew that unmistakable motorcycle frame with wheels was his termination. The next day, the inspectors glanced at the parts, made him take all the extra parts to a secure dumpster. He was reprimanded for not inventorying tools daily and having loose mower parts. The Harley was toast, but he actually kept his job. Story 36. Pretty much just hearing younger guys lie trying to impress. Odds are, if you're a real G, then you can tell who's who. The ones who get caught lying are the ones who have the hardest time because trust level is low to begin with. Include lies and yay. I'd say this is mostly for JDCs, but county jails and prisons have the same problem, I'm sure. Story 37. A new guy was in his 50s and had developed addiction problems later in life. He somehow thought that his age afforded him control of the remote for the only TV on the range. The 10 inmates that rushed his cell, kicked the living crap out of him, and threw him down the stairs felt otherwise. Story 38. Here in Canada, there isn't really any abuse in prisons, as they look at it like, how can we beat up or kill sex offenders if we're ones ourselves? It was my first time in a federal pen, and I didn't know this. Golden rule. The first day I got there, I was assigned a cell, and when I went in, this older guy was in it. My future cellmate. He told me the guy who had the bunk before me wasn't really a clean guy and I should get some disinfectant and a mop, and pointed me in the direction of the cleaning supplies room. I went in, and I was filling my mop bucket when I looked up and noticed these kinds of shelves on the wall that said Government of Canada on them. In the shelves were condoms and lube and bleach. My eyes widened, and I went back to my cell and whispered loudly to my cellie, "What the duck, they're encouraging abuse." I told him about the condoms and he laughed. "Bro, there's gay guys in here who have consensual sex and it's their way of stopping HIV. We just use the bleach to clean our tattoo needles and dye our hair if we get bored." Story 39. So this actually about me. My first day inside, I sat down at a table in my block. Some guy came over and said it was his seat. Me being young and dumb thought, I'm not gonna get punked on my first day. So I told him it's my seat now. He walked away and came back with 3 other guys, and they beat me pretty bad. Believe it or not, I was the one who got the mark for it too. Guard wrote it down as I initiated the fight, spent some time in the hole for it too. Story 40. Asked a friend of mine who I was in rehab with. He said, "Dumb young guy comes in and borrows money, not able to pay it back." The sound of him being abused was horrible. Story 41. Never been an inmate, but I did work as a jailer for a short period of time. I was always assigned to the felony pods, so I knew there were a certain number of guys in those pods that really didn't give a duck. But I didn't peony guys around or be in a hole for no reason, so I was well liked by most of the inmates. One guy came in his first trip to the slammer because he got exanned out and drove into a gas station, then proceeded to snag some cigarettes and other convenience items. I often considered the lifers to be the most laid back, especially the older ones. Don't duck them, and they won't duck you, but mess with them, and they mess back hard. So this day I was sitting at one of the tables chatting with a couple of the older long-term residents, and this new guy comes in and sits at the table. The old-timers ask the new guy, "So what year are you in for?" This kid never even looks up and just says, "Murder." I knew what he was in for. He knew what he was in for, and these other 2 well-experienced prison attendees knew damn well he wasn't there for murder. One of them almost snatched him from across the table. I intervened quickly and explained to the kid that this experience could be as crafty as he wanted to make it or as simple. He could lay low and be in and out and back to his regular life, or he could enter this darker world by being a smartass when asked a simple question. I'm sure he was just scared being his first time in and wanted to maybe make a big bad impression. But telling 2 killers that you killed when you barely have hair on your nuts is a very bad first step. If I recall correctly, he stayed in 3 days waiting to bond out, and he didn't leave his cell other than to grab his tray and scarf down his food. He never even looked toward the shower. Story 42. Some guys told a new guy that if he told the guard he was hurt himself, the guard was obligated to give him a cigarette and let him smoke. What really happens is they take away all your crap, throw you in a turtle suite, and put you on watch for 2 days in an empty cement room. I hated jail, but goddamn, I had some laughs in there. Story 43. He dropped the soap. Everyone was laughing at him. For the rest of his stint, the rest of the inmates called him Klutz. It all worked out for him, though. He moved to Canada and started an extremely popular Tech Tips YouTube channel. Story 44. Former co here. I was in what's called the intake building. When people would come in for their first day, I would hold their papers in my hand, all official, like, put my shoulders back and loudly announce, "Gentlemen, line up, toes on the line. Welcome to Building 5. You will remain in your cell for 2 weeks. Your property will arrive within 1 week. If it doesn't, you may then let me know. At this prison, disputes are settled on the yard with a dance-off competition. If you have an issue with someone, let us know and we will provide cardboard. Now everyone, on the count of 3, you will do 10 jumping jacks. Occasionally, a first-timer would do 1 jumping jack and everyone would laugh. Story 45. Don't talk. Book in, shut your mouth. Be where you're supposed to be and don't touch anything that isn't yours. Don't ever gossip. I can't stress that enough. There's no 100% way to stay safe, but the above is about the best you can do. Standard dumb crap is people either trying to be a tough guy or thinking they've got a friend. Both roads lead to the same end more often than not. Story 46. Saw this fat white kid who became Muslim and then moved into a 4-man cell with 3 black guys and Walla Walla. The next day, the Saws were photographing the red liquid-soaked mattress out on the tier for all of us to see. Story 47. There were 6 of us per cell, 3 thin metal bunks drilled against the left and right side walls, about 3 feet apart in height between each bunk. The bottom bunk was 3 feet off the ground as well. And we only had one empty top bunk left on my side, and that crap was like a 9-foot climb to get on it. Sixth guy gets admitted in and starts demanding a bottom bunk, which I had one of them already. He was about 5'8", maybe 140 pounds. Mind you, I'm 6'2", 215 pounds, so he looked small compared to me. The guy on the other bottom bunk was much bigger than I am. Dude was easily around 6'6", probably pushing around 260. We both just started at him. He grabbed the phone in the cell and started slamming it repeatedly against the box since we weren't paying attention to him. He must have watched some sort of movie or stupid prison guide or something, because he went straight for the other guy, screaming and yelling, "Big ass, dude!" Then got up from the bunk and walked toward him, looking like a damn grizzly bear. He snatched the phone out of his hand and smacked the crap out of him across the face with it. He must have knocked the soul out of the lil guy, because he had him sitting on the toilet for like 2 or 3 days straight, only getting up when one of us had to use it. His cheek was bruised for days too. Ha ha ha. He tried to sneak up to the top bunk in the middle of the night once, and the big-ass dude grabbed him by his pants and pulled him straight off. He hit the floor pretty hard next to me, and the guy told him to go sit back down. Ah! He requested a cell change, and of course it was denied. All in all, it was one of warm welcoming. Story 48. Not prison, but jail. I was getting put in irons with a tiny little crap next to me going to a court date. He looks at me and says loud as hell, "What did you do?" I looked at him and said, "We're going to our arraignments. Are you ducking stupid?" It's sad when the COs and DEPs laugh out loud. Story 49. Seen a guy flood the day room shower to take a bath, complete with a duck made out of TP. This was in county. Prison was what you would expect, but county jail is where the real crap show is. Story 50. An older inmate, like 60 years old or so, brought in a Santa sack-sized bag of food items acquired from canteen from cell block B into block C, which is the good behavior unit, hoping it would buy him immunity. News got around within minutes that he was in for battery on his ex-wife and then got rolled for the sack of goodies. Guards looked the other way and laughed. Story 51. The stupidest thing I've seen on someone's first day of prison is my own first day. I came in so addicted I was puking and crapting, both green fluid, shaking, sweating. My temp was 104. My entire body felt like every single individual bone was breaking, and I've broken bones before I know that pain. But the worst part wasn't that part. It was the psychotic crap. I was hallucinating, seeing people that weren't there, hearing people that weren't there, talking to people who were never there at all. I was having awful panic attacks, waking nightmares, terrors. I was also having heart palpitations, and after a while I started having seizures. It was at this point, specifically this point, that the medical staff decided they should probably get involved and give me an anticonvulsant before I die in this cell, with like 6 other dudes in it watching me. That was all I got, nothing to ease the withdrawals at all. Even something like Suboxone would stop my addiction withdrawals after a couple days of being clean, and I can't get high off it. But they literally don't care. So it went like that every day for weeks. Don't do substances. And if you do, remember severe Xana withdrawal can very likely cause death. And severe Xana withdrawal truly never ends. It can and will do permanent things to your psyche. Many people who abuse Xana get clean, and months after the withdrawals get a thing called rebound anxiety. Xana artificially reduces anxiety, which means your brain compensates by not releasing or producing and storing the chemicals to reduce anxiety. Every time you take a Xana, you rob your brain's natural ability to reduce anxiety. And many people who never had mental health problems before will be diagnosed with severe anxiety disorders after severe long-term benzodiazepine use. Damn that crap. Story 52. First day in jail, only time I've ever been and will ever go, that's for sure. Made the mistake of not keeping my stare in check at some dude's eyes. I kept eye ducking him, and anytime I'd get up from my chair in the pit, he'd come and put his coat down on my seat. I'm glad I never ate at the same time he did. He stared at my cell from his for a long time. Real duck-up. The doors click open for dinner, and my cellmate stayed asleep. I went down by myself and tried to do it all the right way. Wore cess courts, brought my cup down, kept to myself. Minutes later, he comes out and yells at the whole pod, "Where my cellmate at? Who's my cellmate in 215? I said, "Right here." This dude was huge, and he towered over into my face. "You're just gonna let a brother starve in here?" Saying that I'm racist and he's from Florida, he doesn't know what it's like out here in my state. Someone else says, "That's some real crap though." I didn't know it was my job to let him know there was food. I owned up to it and said it's not like that. I'm not racist. I've just never been locked up before. A person at our table said, "You gonna punk his ass?" He said no. I think they thought I couldn't understand them because their speech was so cryptic in a barely audible and mouthful kind of way. Maybe some people know what I'm talking about. Anyways, I got back into the cell and I apologized, saying I just didn't know. He said, "This the first time you ever been locked up?" Said, "Yeah." I apologized again and he said, "Say no more, man." I figured he meant that literally. I shut the duck up after that. That first guy was looking for my eyes too. Also, jail food is crap, and the institutions don't care about dental hygiene. Story 53, left the little kiosk thing logged in under his name and others viewed his charges. Lewd behavior with a minor, I believe it was. Dude got his ass knocked out. Story 54, worked as a CO for 5 years, and the dumbest thing I've seen was a young wankster. Wannabe gangster comes in and starts asking this one guy what's he in for, and guy just straight up backhands him. Big pimp hand power, and starts yelling for us to get young guy away from him. We separate them and get young guy to a different seating area, and he just wouldn't keep his mouth shut. He also kept claiming to be affiliated with the Houston, and he saw someone from his, so he sat with him, but real gangster did his own investigation and found him out. Young guy got his ass beat once again. We found out young guy did have tattoos that closely resemble the same tattoos as the Houston Tango Blast, but he obviously wasn't affiliated in any way. Story 55. Jammed the toilet full of a big wad of paper. Cell was on top tier, flooded the entire block. For some insane reason, the toilets just constantly have water running like they are constantly flushing. Not sure if that's a common thing. Dude came in, went to his cell, and immediately flooded the entire block while he was barricaded in his cell. Extraction unit came and stormed the unit, made everyone in the block lay face down in the floodwater. Yes, the water from the toilet, which was legit 2 inches deep in the block. And then they pepper sprayed the duck out of the dude's cell, which in turn meant that we all got pepper sprayed, while laying belly down outstretched in toilet water. This was in GA, so it was legit 100 plus degrees in the block. Everyone was covered in toilet water and pepper spray. They substances the dude out. Everyone in the block was raging mad. 12 dudes maybe in the block. The dude was back in the block 3 days later. We were all still wearing the same jumpsuits because jail ducking sucks, and that's how that goes. Thank God for soap and showers. The dude promptly got his ass beat, was pulled from block. I assume he was taken to medical. He was fairly lumped up and bleeding. Was brought right back to same block the same day. Got his ass beat again. After the second time, instead of moving him to another block, they locked him down in his cell. I was there for a month after that, and dude never once was out of the cell. No wreck. No nothing. They literally just left him locked in the cell 24 hours a day. This was at a county jail. Ducking brutal. Damn jail. Story 56. Worked in the hospital of a prison. Tiny white guy was an enforcer for a big Mickey on the outside, and his signature threat was a big Bowie knife, which they do not let you bring inside, but that did not check his attitude at all. Flash forward like 2 hours after he is checked in. He is being beat up by a large member of one of the indigenous gangs for running his mouth off about how he could take all comers. Got thrown in solitary for his own protection. 2 weeks after he gets out of solitary, I see him sitting in the waiting room to see the head psychologist, old, crusty, Eye of Sauron type. Calmly tells the doctor that he is going to cut himself if he does not get put back in solitary. Doctor replies, "Okay, but I hear you have been running up a tab, so go ahead, do it. I'll get you stitched back up and sent right back out there. Time to tell me what's going on." Tatted up tiny ducker just burst into tears and starts bawling about his $2,000 debt that he has run up in 2 weeks. He went back to segregation for the maximum amount of time we could keep him there. I think about him a lot. Story 57. Female lieutenant was checking body tats as part of the intake process. One dude was a pretty boy, tatted head to toe. She's writing all his tats down, seeing if any of it's gang-related and crap. Then dude just straight up drops the jumpsuit. I'm sure he had tattoos on his tube steak. Caught a major case his first hour into TDCJ. This was in Huntsville at the Holiday Unit. Story 58. 2000 UK. 2 lads came on the wing dressed in pink and green bright fluorescent shirts and pinstripe pants. Within 30 seconds, most of the cons were lining up taking pot shots at them. One made it into a cell pretty quick. The other made the mistake of running into the screw's office thinking he was safe. In reality, the only screw on the wing was playing table tennis and laughing along with the rest of us at the fact that these guys voluntarily got dressed that way. That morning. Story 59. Some chomo got moved to our block. Can't remember if he was new or not. But we all knew. He abused a girl and was in this time because he violated his parole by being at a library. He apparently told someone he was allergic to green beans and offered them up at lunch. The next day, everyone in the block, 32 of us, was told to give their green beans to this inmate who was basically the tough guy who happened to be Chomo's current cellmate. That night, he shoved all of them down Chomo's throat. Chomo moved blocks later that day. No one got in trouble. Story 60. I'm going to go a different route and tell two that ended without serious violence. First, kid, maybe 19 or 20, in our 40-man GP tank had told everyone when his birthday was, and they made damn sure to mark it down. In jail, you don't get birthday spankings or pinches or tickles. None of that silly crap. You get birthday punches? He looked like a walking bruise the day after. Second, this guy was like 40, but was kind of fried and had obviously never been incarcerated before. Anyway, he came into the showers without wearing his slides. To make things worse for him, there was about 20 of us in there showering at that time, so word spread quick, and he got so much crap for it. Story 61. Saw a man who thought since he was locked up, every other person on the inside was as terrible of a person as he is, and proudly proclaimed for all to hear that he was serving his time for beating a boy half to death, his nephew no less, because his nephew spit on him and needed to be taught some respect. Keep in mind, he somehow broke this poor kid's jaw. Needless to say, the other inmates wasted little time teaching the guy how to really be taught some respect. I don't think I saw that guy's mouth open again the rest of my sentence. Of course, that may be because they had to see it shut. Story 62. Just a funny one. Telling new guys to get their mattress stamped. They come in and we would tell them they had to bring their mat up to the guard and get it stamped with their name and bunk number. They go up to the bubble, mattress in tow, and the guards tell them there is no such thing. They turn around to 100 dudes clapping and laughing. Story 63. Not me, but my dad was a co. He told me a story of a big guy who was relatively new who tried picking on another guy who was much smaller than him only to have his ass handed to him by the little guy. Story 64. Went to a PWC outside Atlanta for a few months, and this dude kept getting store loaned out and would never pay guys back. He ended up getting beaten so often and put on the door in every cell block. He got put on yard restriction by these COs because he owed inmates so much they knew. It was just a matter of time before he got killed. They ended up having to take him to the county jail and serve the rest of his sentence there. Story 65. I asked my friend what his was. He told me on his first day he went to his cell and brushed his teeth, and the shaving cream looked just like toothpaste and used it. Story 66. I did a year a while back. Saw some really stupid crap quite frequently. Two guys were having a pretty heated argument, and there was a young kid nearby who was only doing 3 months for violating his probation. In my state, they send you to actual prison for that. He is watching the argument and is talking crap on the side. Both the guys drop the argument, and one of them proceeds to beat the crap out of the kid. Beat him so bad and bashed his face into the floor so bad he had to have reconstructive surgery. We called the stupid thug kids who thought they were hard and only doing the 3-month probation violation 90-day lifers. Story 67. Walking into another man's cell without permission. I've seen a few first-timers do it, and it never goes down well. As well as getting to pally with the screws, hanging around the offices and crap like that because they're too scared to associate with the inmates. Doing this makes you look shady as hell, and is normally the typical behavior of a nonce wrong UN, definitely not recommended. Oh, and not showering because they've watched too many prison films. Story 68. I can't believe I'm admitting to this, but it's me. I'm the one who did the stupidest thing ever. I forgot there was a bag of WD in my pocket when I got booked into jail. I live in rural KS. Went from going to jail for just a couple hours to looking at 2 years of very hard time, all in less than 5 minutes. My lawyer got smuggling a controlled substance into a federal facility, pled down to misdemeanor possession. But it was a very scary trial. I almost ruined my life because I was too stoned to remember to check my pockets. Horrible. Story 69. I'll never forget there was a guy that came in. I'd already been in for about 5 months at that point, and I guess it was just too much for him because the first thing that he did was go to the buzzer and tell the officers that the demons were laughing at him and telling him to do things. They promptly sent him to the psych isolation ward where he was naked in a cell for 72 hours with nothing but a safety blanket when he returns. The demons had coincidentally left him. Story 70. I was at CMCF in Mississippi in quick bed waiting for a spot in a boot camp program when I was 18. This guy was on his first day, and I was friendly with him because he racked next to me and didn't seem like a terrible guy. After he had settled in for a few hours, he got the bright idea to change the channel on the only TV in the zone. Now, you convicts out there know that when the soaps are on, that TV stays on soaps till they are over. I told him, don't do it. Apparently, he couldn't stand watching Days of Our Lives. So he just wouldn't listen and said, nah, damn, that they don't run crap. He got up off his rack and started towards the TV. The shot caller for the GDs got up right behind him, and as soon as his finger hit the button and he turned around, he got knocked the duck out. Story 71. I don't know. I've seen a lot of crap in the 16 years I did straight in the pen. Maybe one of the stupidest things is there is a myth that you go in and try to run up and fight the first and biggest guy you see to make a name for yourself. I was actually fresh at the time myself, and one of the guys I came in with tried to do that on a big black guy and got put in the hospital. He then also didn't get the respect he was looking for because the guy he tried to beat up was well respected and a lifer. Story 72. If you have a jail job, you oftentimes miss the hot food served for lunch or dinner. Your replacement meal is often peanut butter and jelly packets with bread or a bologna sandwich and a cookie. This is left on the rec table for the inmates coming back from work. Saw a dude rifle through all the containers and grabbed all the cookies. He was corrected and was forced to give up his hot meal that night to someone who missed lunch. He took it upon himself to do the same thing not even 2 days later and was beat up so badly, I didn't recognize him. Story 73. They listened to the worst advice given to people who are going to be locked up. He chose the biggest, scariest looking dude and popped him in the mouth. Do not start a fight with the biggest dude in there. You want to be safe in prison? Be respectful to the guys around you. Don't do anything that's going to bring heat down on your cell block, housing unit, whatever your prison calls it. Dudes in prison are just trying to live. They got a program, and if you do anything to disturb that, starting a fight is going to start an investigation, usually involving lockdown and shakedown. People are going to get real pissed at you real fast. Story 74. Come in and refuse to show their papers. This is a big no-no. Even if you're embarrassed about why you got arrested, if it's not a crime against a child or a few other ones, then you better be ready to prove so. If you don't, they are automatically going to assume you're no good and you're going to either 1. Pay a rent 2, check out of the pod or Unit 3, bond out and stay out also. I've seen people who don't fight back if they're tested. It's better to fight and lose than to not fight at all if provoked. Story 75. Not on his first day, but his last. As he was being released and escorted out to the parking lot, he started spouting off at the co telling them to duck off and that they couldn't do anything to him. Then he got in an altercation with the guard and ended up going right from prison to jail. Story 76. Saw a guy barter his bunk for a piece of cake. It was a crowded jail with around 60 people and 48 bunks. The new folks had to toss sleeping pads on the floor and deal with it, and one new guy bought a bunk for his dessert from lunch. And then, after the cake had been eaten, a guard told the new guy that the inmates don't get to decide who gets a bed and he'd given away his cake for nothing. Story 77. Not me, but my uncle was in Silverwater Jail here in Australia. A new guy, mid-30s, was in for child molestation and indecent assault. People found out pretty fast why he was inside. A few of them got a bucket, filled it about half full with as many sugar packets as they could find, and filled the rest with boiling water, essentially making a paste of boiling sugar. They threw it right in this guy's face, melting his skin. He told me it reminded him of Watchmen. Gnarly crap. Story 78. I saw on a thread a while back that young and dumb guys come in thinking they have to show off how tough they are, so someone would challenge them to a push-up competition and make them go first. Once they've done all they can do and are tired and can't defend themselves, they'll get jumped. Story 79. I was being processed in the county jail in Peskortniks, which is notorious for their pink boxers. A group of inmates were being released, and one of them saw a stack of the boxers and took a pair, which ended with him going back to jail. Why even steal those? Who knows how many people wore them? Story 80. People are always asking what your charges are. The sex offenders were all the same. I don't want to talk about it. They would get all anxious about it. They never tried to lie. Every time it never failed. The COs wouldn't tell us straight up, but the cooler ones would always confirm or deny. That's who we knew who to beat on when things got to bussin'. Story 81. Little 18-year-old kid walked straight up to a guard on duty and straight up tried to punch the guy in the face. He got tased and added, I think what I was told around 7 years. Commenter. One guy tell literally everyone how he was going to escape and showed off all the tools he was using. Story 82. I did not realize that there was racial segregation and sat down in the African American section. Thankfully, they said, first day you get a freebie. Don't sit here again. Story 83. Not me. But my roommate acquired the name of Dead Kids. after he didn't see the point of wearing his sandals in the shower. If you're wondering how he came about this name, think about what lonely men do in the shower. Story 84. Young fella came in straight away asking for substances, so someone gave him a shot, but it was just water. Watched him too see it, he acted different. After a while, they told him it was water, and the whole unit laughed at him. Story 85. How do new inmates learn all these rules? As I see it from here, you can get the crap kicked out of you for any reason, and you wouldn't even know what unwritten rule you broke. Story 86. Want a real answer? The first day in prison, you will spend most of it being processed and booked in. Your day will consist largely of sitting around in holding cells and being subject to various examinations. The first thing that happens is you will be dressed out. This usually involves being strip searched first. An officer will take whatever clothes you had on, ask you to open mouth and raise tongue, lift balls, sack, spin, and bend and cough. Then you'll be given a set of prison clothes and usually made to shower, often with anti-lice shampoo. Then you'll probably sit in a holding cell for a while. There may be an orientation video playing on a TV, and you'll probably be given a rule book and whatnot to review. One by one, they'll call people out for various exams. You'll give a medical mental health history and have a cursory physical examination. You may be given a personality assessment test, and if you don't meet with a caseworker that day, you will soon after. At some point, you'll be photographed, probably fingerprinted again, your tattoos will be recorded, etc. Eventually, you'll get to proceed into housing. Many prisons have a particular block that all new inmates get housed in initially, and these blocks will have more restricted activities. Sometimes they are full, and you'll spend your first couple nights in a segregation block or wherever else they have beds that isn't general population. Once in the block, there's a good chance you'll be stuck in your cell all night, and likely the next day. They tend to keep people quarantined until the tuberculosis test can be read. There's probably more I'm not mentioning. I've been through this a handful of times.